Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Patmos, and today I'm going to tackle the difficult issue of when should vaccines be mandated versus when they should be encouraged, and what are the ethical boundaries and what's the underlying ethical framework for when we should mandate and when we should encourage, and why we should not discourage. So, to begin with, you've probably seen the headlines. This is what prompted me to write this. I saw a headline the other day about Florida now under the leadership of Governor DeSantis and the Surgeon General of Florida, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, are moving to outlaw all mandatory vaccination, including and specifically childhood vaccinations, the vaccinations that your kids are required to have if they're going to go to public school: measles, mumps, rubella, polio, etc. Well, Dr. Ladapo last year discouraged parents from quarantining their children if they're exposed to measles, if they're unvaccinated. In fact, he said, go ahead and send your kids to school if they're unvaccinated and exposed, which is really dumb because that triggered a bigger epidemic a bigger outbreak in Florida, which then spread to other states, which is now spreading all around the country. I think there's very good reason to believe that the 1,700 or so confirmed cases of measles right now in the United States spreading around the country that have killed, I think, 2 or 3 people, probably had its origin in Florida last year because Dr. Ladapo encouraged parents to send their kids to school if they were exposed, which is really against all common sense and all infection control practices. Well, now, doubling down on stupidity, Florida is now about to ban all mandatory vaccination. So I thought it would be good to look at this issue from the standpoint of principles of bioethics, autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. And so in the text below, please read it, is a little summary of these basic principles of bioethics and a discussion about when are vaccines, when they can be mandated, and when they should not be mandated, and when it should be made voluntary. First of all, it boils down to this: there's a tension between autonomy and beneficence and justice. If if the protection offered from a vaccination is very strong, like it is for measles, where the protection is like 95 plus percent, that overwhelms the autonomy, the feeling that you have total control over what happens with your body, because the public good is so great. It outweighs the individual autonomy, beneficence, and social justice prevail. And that's why mandatory vaccination has stood the test of time and been supported for more than half a century with these kinds of vaccines, these vaccines that are highly effective at preventing disease and reducing death and morbidity and mortality. With COVID vaccination, it's a little different story. Early on in the pandemic, there was good when the initial vaccination was about 90% effective. There was good justification for mandating vaccination. But as the pandemic wore on, the calculus changed, and forcing public mandates was never indicated. It was encouraged. So the only exception is for healthcare workers, where there's clearly a moral and ethical imperative. So with respect to COVID vaccination, where are we at? It's different than childhood school vaccinations. With COVID vaccination, it's only mandated in certain select circumstances, but it is encouraged everywhere else. Why? Because there's individual benefit. You're much less likely to die or get seriously ill if you are vaccinated. There's also overall about a 30% reduction in spread of disease with vaccination. So you're less likely to spread it to other people. That's not the 95% that we see with measles vaccination. but it is still pretty good, and but not enough to mandate that everybody be vaccinated against COVID. But everybody should be encouraged to be vaccinated against COVID. It is morally in wrong and morally indefensible to discourage COVID vaccination. So those folks out there, you've seen them on social media and even in Congress, and these alleged experts discouraging COVID vaccination. That is immoral. That is unethical. It is absolutely ethically justified to encourage COVID vaccination. And in fact, you should be vaccinated for a moral and ethical reason because you're less likely to infect, to die and burden society with severe disease and death. And you're also less likely to infect others and who might also die. Now, that protection is not gigantic, but it's not negligible. 30%, 40%, 50% reduction in spread of disease is not negligible. And I think it's really puts the burden on you to be vaccinated. But with respect to childhood vaccination, there is no question. Those should be mandated unless everybody is smart and voluntarily vaccinates their children, which will not happen, especially in this age when we have people like Robert Kennedy who are actively discouraging vaccination. So let me sum it up by saying this. Dr. Ladapo, Florida, Robert Kennedy, Peter McCullough, Robert Malone, to the extent that these people discourage immunization, it is unethical. The medical freedom movement thinks it's being ethical. It is only in a certain sense. Autonomy is important, and we must have autonomy. You can't force everything on everybody, but there are certain circumstances where autonomy takes a back seat to beneficence and justice. And with respect to childhood vaccinations, clearly they should be mandated. And what Florida and Dr. Ladapo are doing is wrong. What Robert Kennedy is doing by discouraging vaccination is wrong. It is ethically wrong and it is immoral. And you should be vaccinated against all the things you should be vaccinated against, including COVID. It's your ethical obligation, your moral obligation to do so. Can't mandate it unless you're a healthcare worker, but certainly for the general public, it's your moral obligation to get vaccinated to at least reduce the risk of spread. If not perfect, at least you're reducing the risk of spread to others. So I just wanted to clarify a little bit about the ethics around this. What we basically have are people who are advocating for actions that violate basic principles of ethics. So I'm not a world's authority on this, but Dr. Art Kaplan is. So if you have more interest in reading about bioethics, read anything written by Dr. Art Kaplan, Kaplan. As for that, that's my post for today. Hope you found it thought provoking. Have a great day and get vaccinated. You'll be smarter if you do.